one. Can folks see and hear me? Okay,
We
there we
can hear
go.
you.
That sounds okay. Great. Um, I made some slides for this. I think I probably made too many, so I'll try to move through them quickly and mostly talk. Please let me know if you have questions. This is not so big a group that we can't have a real discussion. Um, so I am gonna try to talk through. You can go to the next slide. I am gonna try to talk through. My colleague Boomi was here on Zoom last week, and if anyone saw that, she did a grounding in our overall power building model. I'm going to talk today particularly about elections, and I'm going to try to talk about some of the elements of campaign strategy, including targeting, messaging, and building a team, and how we think those are important. And we'll end with some upcoming opportunities, including my other colleague, Jeevan, is going to be here next week. So if you are interested in this stuff, there's more to come. Okay, next slide. This is the Working Families Party power building model. You'll see that the North Star is governing power, which means that we're aiming to run the damn place. So we're not. There are lots of smaller bits of power that are important on the way to that, but we are actually trying to control the state and local government and have it actually act in the interest of working people. We're looking for a world where we don't have to beg for the issues that we care about to be somewhere on the agenda. They are the agenda from the start. So our primary intervention is elections. That's mostly what we do. Our form is a political party. That means we're trying to act in a way that allows lots of people to engage in that politics, either as voters, candidates, activists, or elected officials. And our constituency is the multiracial working class. So we're thinking about politics kind of up and down more than left and right for the most part. Okay, next. All right. Elections really matter, and I made some ways so Gio, you can just pop these up. First of all, you don't need to read these. First of all, the winner holds formal power in government, and they can make some very real decisions for our lives and our communities. That's pretty obvious, you all know that. The second is that there are moments of high drama that can, although they don't always, engage people in new ways. They're an opportunity to elevate new leaders. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but sometimes someone who previously has been a relatively unknown community activist runs for office, and all of a sudden everybody knows who they are and cares about what they have to say. They're an opportunity to build alliances between organizations and voting blocks. In fact, they almost always require that. It's very rare that one single community or one single block of voters can elect a candidate on their own. They call for a united front, and they require us to make common cause with other people. They allow us to inject issues into the debate and to build a narrative and shape what people care about. To some extent, voters bring the things that they care about to an election, and there's very little you can do to change what they think. On the other hand, if you spend a whole election campaign talking about an issue, and even more if a whole bunch of candidates across a city or a state or a nation spend time talking about an issue, it becomes something that people are really paying attention to and that they're evaluating candidates on. All of those are ways in which elections really make a difference in the landscape. Next slide. Great. While we believe about elections, a few things. Electoral intervention is essential. We believe in getting our hands dirty in this way. I think I was talking to you earlier, and you were like, they don't always do what you want them to do. That's certainly true. And not every election is worth getting involved in, but electoral interventions are incredibly important. They're one of the really important levers of power that we have. We do need our own people to get elected, which means having the right candidates is the first and probably the most important step. Direct voter contact, which means talking directly to voters, preferably in person, is a deeply held value that we have at WFP. That's partly a moral value about the way that we think democracy should work. It's also because we win more elections that way. when we talk to people face to face. And then politics is about outcomes. We're aiming to actually tangibly change the lives of working people, not just make a statement in the world. So sometimes that means we're making hard choices, but we're not trying to be right. We're trying to make the world a better place. Okay, next. Oh, you really can't see that one. Never mind. It says 3 important things. The easiest way to think about elections is that there are 3 big buckets that people are trying to mobilize to win an election. One is the message. That's what you're talking about, what you have to say about yourself and your candidate, and very importantly about the contrast between your candidate and whoever else is running, right? So message and having that clarity is a super important part of every campaign. The other is resources. Primarily resources on campaigns are money. If you're running for president, if you're running for Congress, it's a lot of money. And it's super constraining as to who can do those jobs and what it's like to do those jobs. If you're running for state or local office, it's a lot less money. And it's a lot easier for somebody who is a community organizer or a local person to put that together. Not that putting together the money to run a race isn't still quite hard work. And the last is field. That's what the term that gets used for just talking to voters one-on-one out in the community. And we do that in a lot of different ways, from like house parties to door-to-door to phone calls. But like most of the stuff that you have probably done, if you've ever done work on a campaign, is in this last bucket. But that's kind of it. There aren't like that many more things that people are trying to do on elections. They are quite hard. It's tricky to figure out, but it's not rocket science. Okay, next slide. I'm going to pause. Actually, let me just ask first if there are any overall questions, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the 3 most important things I know about what it takes to successfully run an election, which are targeting, messaging, and the team that you build.
Can you just clarify the difference?
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Can you reiterate the question so we can hear it, so we know on the...
Oh, he asked if I could say more about the difference between when I said more up and down than left and right. People often talk about politics as left and right. And to be clear, we sometimes think about ourselves as a party on the left. But what's actually more important is that we think about ourselves as being for the interests of working people. And we define that pretty broadly, from like nurses and teachers to people who have trouble finding or holding a job at all. And against like the billionaires and the corporate interests that are having a truly negative influence on all of those people's lives in different ways, of course. But that's how I think about like the up and down piece.
So what's the up and what's the down?
Oh, the billionaires are up.
Oh,
The rest of us sadly are down.
so
Yeah.
when you say up and down, though, are you saying that it sounds like you're suggesting a trickle down theory?
Totally the opposite. Yeah.
So that it's really non-directional. It's not so much. That's a nice catchphrase, up and down, but really what you're talking about is something that's non-directional.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about redistribution of like power and resources. Resources in a sort of like tangible way in people's
Okay,
lives.
So up and down pertains to redistribution.
Yeah, and power too, right? Like we know that there are certain people who have enormous concentrations of power,
Right.
and the rest of us need to band together and organize to have anything like enough to make any difference. Yeah,
Bring down some of that which is up.
that's right. Correct. You got it.
That's not trickle down, that's redistribution. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Me too.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
I don't know if it was covered, I didn't see last week,
Yeah.
but if you could go a little into vision voting,
Mhm.
because I think it illustrates how not that many votes can really push an elected official, right?
Yeah.
Certainly.
Luis is asking about something called fusion voting, which is a tool that we use in a bunch of states where we operate, namely New York and Connecticut and Oregon. A single person to run to be nominated by two different parties. So if Luis were running for office, he could be the Democratic candidate, but he could also be the Working Families Party candidate. And that allows us to demonstrate how many people agree with our position and our values in an election. And oftentimes it's the margin of victory for candidates in those places. We sometimes run people as Working Families Party only candidates as well. We have a couple candidates on the Philadelphia City Council, one in Hartford, they're not Democrats, they're not Republicans, they're just Working Families Party people. Plenty of times we're also running people inside Democratic primaries as Working Families aligned candidates, even when we have fusion voting. We are, in a good way, opportunistic about our ways of winning power.
I didn't know it was a
Yeah. Yeah, sadly, no, it's not the norm. But it only operates in general elections. So even in New York, where we have fusion voting and we win a lot of power that way, we also run primaries inside the Democratic Party. Okay, great. Any other questions?
Anybody online? I don't see anything.
Okay, great. I'm going to talk about targeting for a minute. You can go to the next slide. Targeting is just the process by which you decide who you're talking to. And people can get super fancy, but I like to start with some very basic principles because they're really important to understanding, thinking about campaigns. And the first one is that every campaign is different. So if you decide to run for office and people are like, okay, I've done a bunch of campaigns before, I know you got to do X, Y, and Z, take that with a certain grain of salt. Truly it's different every time. So you actually need to build a specific strategy. Now, that's not to say that you aren't going to end up doing many of the same things that other people do to win elective office, but every campaign is different. So you guys want to name some ways in which campaigns are different from each other? Issues?
Yeah, because times change.
For sure.
The way people articulate their needs, they change based on a lot of their needs.
Yep, the way voters articulate their needs, and also the issues that a candidate is bringing to the table, either because of their expertise or their experience or just their read of their strategy and analysis of the situation. Yep,
I think the strategy changes more than the issues.
Yeah.
Because, for example, the issue of mass incarceration, which very few politicians put on their agenda, even now, that issue is permanent.
Been around for a long time.
The slaveocracy that continues.
Yeah. Yeah, and I sometimes say to candidates, there are people have a lot of problems. They care about a lot of different things. You're probably not going to talk about all of them in your campaign. You need to choose the ones that are going to motivate voters and are going to be true to who you are, and figure out how to put those two things together.
Do you have any information on the extent to which mass incarceration has had an impact on families across the vast number of families, so that it's an issue common to most people?
I know it's an issue common to a whole lot of people. Yeah, for sure. And an issue that is actually deeply relevant in electoral campaigns in a lot of places. Yeah. Yeah. We started a little while ago, a few years ago, we started doing a lot of DAs and sheriffs races, in part because they have a very direct governing power in people's lives around those issues, and people are super motivated about them when you talk to them about them in a real way. So yes, it can be a hard issue, but it can also be a super motivating one. Okay, next slide. Okay, a few principles are true of every election, no matter what. They're different, can be different on issues. The geography can be different. The candidate can be different, but some things are the same every time. Next slide. First of all, voters decide the outcome of election, except if you're running for president, and then we have this pesky electoral college. But in every other election out there, voters decide the outcome of the election, which is really good news for us. I think often people are like, endorsement of this person, or you have to raise the most money, or you have to do this. many of those things can be important in the outcome of an election, but you should always be asking yourself, to what extent is this a thing that moves actual human voters to do something one way or the other? Because in the end, it's always voters who decide the outcome of elections. Okay, two, your resources are sadly limited. And on a campaign, you've got three kinds of resources. You've got money, as depicted here. You have people, and you have time. And actually, time is the most valuable one, because you can get more money by asking more people for it, and you can usually recruit more people or pay people to come work on your campaign. But the amount of time that you have between now and whatever the election day is actually the thing that's most compressed. So a lot of campaigns decisions end up being about how to maximize their time. Okay, next slide. Votes are not equally easy or costly to get. Who are we talking to? And voters are not equally likely to vote. And in any particular election, there are lots of people out there who vote every 4 years for president, but if you showed up and talked to them about voting for a school committee, they'd be like, what? So voters are not equally likely to vote. They're not equally likely to vote for your candidate. So if you are a candidate running for office or someone helping a candidate running for office, you need to be very judicious and careful about who you vote for. That's really important to winning an election. It also can be kind of, if you go to the next slide, can also be kind of not great for democracy, because people are more likely to talk to the voters who have voted in the past. Sometimes activists get really excited about the people who are least likely to vote. That can also be a problem. So you actually, if you're a candidate or a campaign, you need a balanced strategy, and you need to be really realistic about who are the new people that your campaign could bring into the process. And I do want to tell a story here. I worked on a campaign that I'm really proud of for a woman named Marcia Ranglin-Vassell in Rhode Island a couple of years ago. She was a Jamaican immigrant, and she beat the sitting majority leader of the House, which is a really big deal. Almost never happens. Teacher. And she was white, she was black. The district was mostly white, but it had maybe 1,000 black voters in it. And she and her sisters made a list of the 300 black voters in the district who hadn't ever voted. It was a primary, it's a Democratic primary, who hadn't ever voted in a primary before. Now, many political strategists would have told them, don't talk to those people at all. But she was like, look, I think I have something to say to these people, and I think I uniquely can get them, which would be different than if someone else were running for office who had a different story, a different identity. So, and it wasn't just any volunteer who went to talk to them. She and her two sisters, who were also very persuasive, went and talked to these 300 voters. And come election day, 50 of them showed up. Now, 50 out of 300 is not actually a giant number, and 50 votes is not actually enough to win the election. She got by far the most of her votes in the election from people who were much more likely voters who she persuaded. But she won the election by 21 votes. So those 50 votes were absolutely critical. So I think each time you do a campaign, thinking about what is the people who I can bring in, and then the good thing about doing that inside of something like the Families Party is we don't just run one race and try to win it. We're running race after race after race, building up on each other over time. So those 50 voters who showed up for Marcia Ranglin-Vassell are much more likely to show up again for somebody else, and bringing new people into the process that way. And that's also the importance of working deeply with community organizations who can, if you go back one slide, who can do work in some of these other boxes that we don't get to spend as much time with on a campaign. So in lots of ways, when you're running a campaign for office, it's like a moment of counting up and delivering the votes you have. And there's also this super important work to do leading up to and leading out of, and layering one election on top of each other to grow the pie of votes you actually have available. Okay, and I can stop there.
Awesome. So can we please get a round of both online and in-person applause? Thank you, Georgia and
All
Lady
right.
Family.
Yay, thank you. Woohoo.
21
Also,
votes can
thank you,
count.
Frugal.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a margin you like to have. You do like to have more, can, but it will do.
All right.
There was an election just a couple years ago in Boston, won by one vote.
What was that election?
Julia Mejia, who sits on the Boston City Council, won by one vote
Yeah.
in the whole city of Boston. Okay,
And and we just got a reminder for Q&A time.
yeah.
And so we'd like to take some hands. If you're in person, we got one hand. We'll start with Luis, and then people online, please think about the questions you're gonna ask. You may put them in the chat or raise your hand, and our staff will make note of it. We have just about 4 minutes left because of the interruption. Luis?
So outside of Javan, who will probably speak to, what other area, Massachusetts, Greater Boston, possibilities, or are other people running as WFP, and where, and
Yeah. So WFP is strong in Connecticut, and I realized this as we were out on the sidewalk. We have a former WFP elected official from Connecticut here with us. Thank you. And we have a strong presence in Rhode Island. We have not built a WFP Massachusetts. That I think is starting to change this year. So I would love to continue to be in conversation with anyone who's interested, and certainly with Ujima leaders about it. We're starting to build an organizing committee for that work, and we'll start to do our first races this fall in the municipal elections. Because of the way the electoral structure is here, those people won't be running as like working families. In fact, nobody runs as like Democrats in the municipal elections either. All the municipal elections are nonpartisan. So we'll be looking for candidates we are excited about, and can do work for and can build the party around, but they won't officially be on the ballot as WFP. But we'll probably only do a few this fall because this is our sort of like first foray, and then hopefully that leads to building more and more over time.
Thank you. And yes, yeah, we have a question from Jenny.
Have there been like, I know like every election's different and issues are different in different places, but are there like particularly like what are the strong issues for like working family parties out there like resonating best with that
And the question,
your candidates?
and then the question was, what are the? You heard it?
Yeah, what issues are resonating the best? It does really depend a lot. I think some resonate across the board. People are like always worried about jobs and wages. They're always worried about the price of things. In the places that I work in New England, that list is usually topped by the price of housing, but also the price of childcare and all the other things that people need to live. We out of talking about the tax system and raising taxes on the wealthiest folks, which is, in addition to being a good issue, is required to lower the price of some of those essential things for everyone else. Yeah, there are new issues bubbling up all the time, and there are obviously local issues to particular, like sometimes you'll be out in a neighborhood and the only thing they want to talk about is the pothole. Like that does happen, right? Or you'll be out in a neighborhood and the only thing they want to talk about is violence that's been on the block. Like that happens too. Are pretty universal.
Nice. And Prahlad has a question. Yeah, you'll reiterate it, and that will be our last in-person question.
so I guess my question is, not really specific to the Chinese party, but like, what do you need from, like I've been to many city council meetings where like a bunch of people would bring up like this, it sounds very reactionary, but there's something coming up for discussion and people react to it and they come to the meeting and they say, hey, you don't want more guns for police.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want our budget going to drones for the police,
Mhm.
whatever. And then, you know, for me, observing it and being part of it, it seems like there's a lot of negotiation around, you given issue when it rises up to sometimes.
Are they frozen? Am I frozen?
They're
I
frozen.
can't hear them. I think they are. Oh, no. I see.
Hey, Sienna, really quickly, I sent you a private message.
Okay.
All
Sorry,
right,
I wasn't
thanks. No
typing.
worries.
Sorry, but I just want to get reconnected. Oh, there it is.
People to show up as their whole selves for all the things that they care about. It's super hard to sustain. You're doing some of those things already, like making it fun. Come in at moments of high drama and then need to take some time off and take care of their families or do something else or whatever. So creating a structure that allows people to come in and take a break. But yes, it's super hard.
And I do recognize that there was a signal interruption while Georgia was speaking for that question. But perhaps if you could just maybe summarize that last point one more time, and then we could just transition at that point to the end of our Q&A.
Oh, okay. Let me try to summarize. The question was about how do you sustain organizing, energy around organizing, and I was saying that when was it? Toward the end of what I was saying?
It was like in the middle. So you had addressed some of the points, the personal points that Prahlad was making.
Yeah. I think trying to create a more holistic organizing where people can organize around a bunch of different issues and then trying to like make it fun and inviting as you guys do so well here for folks, and then creating a structure where people can come in for moments of high drama and take a break when they need to too.
Excellent. And that actually brings our Q&A to a close, not energetically, but simply for the sake of time. If you have questions that are in the chat, Tamashi made races that WFP candidates are involved in, but I'm not plugged into what is Working Families Party campaigns and agendas near me, I wouldn't know who to support in a race like that. Thank you, Tamashi.
Hopefully, eventually, we will be a really good signal for you to be able to know who the good folks are to vote for. But we're just starting to build it here in Massachusetts. If you live somewhere else, you might already have some good signals.
Excellent. Thank you again. Can we get a round of applause for Georgia?
Thanks for having me.
Working
Thank
Families
you
Party
for
and
coming.
thank you.